and the whitewashed bar tucked away in a corner of a square in the Moorish quarter had seemed like the kind of quiet place that appealed. Pretty soon, it was looking like he'd picked the wrong one, at the wrong time. Of all the joints in all the pueblos of the Sierra Almejara foothills, he'd had to wander into this one. He'd been picking up the vibe and watching the signs from the moment he walked in, but the beer looked good, and it was too late to change his mind, and he didn't have anything better to do anyway. So he hung around mainly to see whether his guess would turn out right, which it soon did. The bar wasn't exactly crowded, but it wasn't empty either. Without consciously counting, he registered the presence of a dozen people in the shady room, not including the owner, a wide little guy in a faded polo shirt, who was lazily tidying up behind the bar and didn't speak as he served Ben a bottle of the local cerveza. Ben carried his drink over to a shady corner table, dumped his bag, and settled there with his back to the wall, facing the door, away from the other punters, where he could see the window and survey the rest of the room at the same time. Old habits. Ben Hope was someone who preferred to observe than to be observed. He reclined in his chair and sipped his cool beer. The situation unfolding in front of him was a simple one, following a classic pattern he had witnessed more often and in more places in his life than he cared to count, like an old movie he'd seen so many times before. What was coming was as predictable and inevitable as the fact that he wasn't just going to sit there and let it happen. On the left side of the room, midway between Ben's corner table and the bar, a guy was sitting alone, nursing a half-empty tumbler and a half-empty bottle of Arhucas Cata Oro rum that he looked intent on finishing before he passed out. He was a man around his mid-30s, obviously a Spaniard, lean-faced, with a thick head of glossy, tousled black hair and skin tanned to the colour of café con leche. His expression was grim, his eyes bloodshot. A 4-day beard shaded his cheeks, and his white shirt was crumpled and grubby, as if he'd been wearing it for a few days and sleeping in it too. But he didn't have the look of a down-and-out or a vagrant, just of a man who was very obviously upset and working hard to find solace in drink. Ben knew all about that. The Spanish guy sitting alone trying to get wrecked wasn't the problem, nor were the elderly couple at the table in the right corner at the back of the barroom, opposite Ben. The old man must have been about 1,000 years old, and the way his withered neck stuck out of his shirt collar made Ben think of a Galapagos tortoise. His wife wasn't much younger, shriveled to something under 5 feet with skin like rawhide. The Moorish sultans had probably still ruled these parts back when they'd started dating. Still together, still in love. Ben thought they looked like a sweet couple in a wrinkly kind of way. Nor, again, was any of the potential trouble coming from the man seated at a table by the door. With straw-coloured hair, cropped short and receding, he looked too pale and Nordic to be a local. Maybe a Swedish tourist, Ben thought, or a Dane. An abstemious one, drinking mineral water, while apparently engrossed in a paperback. No. The source of the problem was right in the middle of the barroom, where 2 tables had been dragged untidily together to accommodate the noisy crowd of foreigners. It didn't take much to tell they were Brits. 8 of them, all in their 20s, all red-faced from exuberance and the large quantity of local brew they were throwing down their throats. Their T-shirts were loud, their voices louder. Ben had heard their raucous laughter from outside. Their table was a mess of spilled beer and empty bottles, loose change and cigarette packs. To the delight of his mates, one of them clambered up on top of it and tried to do a little dance before he almost toppled the whole thing over and fell back in his chair, roaring like a musketeer. They weren't as rowdy as some gangs of beery squaddies Ben had seen, but they weren't far off it. The barman was casting a nervous eye at them as he weighed up the risks of asking them to leave against what they were spending in the place. Next, they broke into a chanting rendition of Y Viva España that was too much for the ancient couple in the right corner. The barman's frown deepened as they made